Hello, thank you for being on time. Let's give applause to all of us for the next session. The next session will be Subplenary People's Voice. This session brings together non-state actors. These groups play very important roles both in raising people's voice and also interests and in sharing their experience, ranging from grassroots issues to debates in international fora. A sustainability agenda may be able to bridge the development and conservation gap in regard to blue carbon ecosystem, which span coastal zones through to the open ocean, including marine protected areas, while keeping a keen eye on practicality aspect. Panel members will cover the governance and institutional challenges around mainstreaming blue carbon at national and global levels. And this Subplenary People's Voice event will be moderated by Mr. Jatna Supriyatna, Research Center for Climate Change, University of Indonesia. To Mr. Jatna Supriyatna, please welcome.
Good morning, selamat pagi Bapak Ibu sekalian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We have 1.5 hours going to discuss about the civil society involvement on the blue carbon. So I'd like to call Pak Ketut Sarjana Putra from Conservation International. By the way, where's Pak Alan? Alan Karupitan? Oh, come on, okay. The second speaker, Pak Rizal Gamar, Al-Gamar, from TNC, the Nature Conservancy. Pak Nyoman Suryadi Putra, and Pak Martin Hadi Winata. Pak Martin has not arrived yet, but hopefully that he's coming soon. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome this very important civil society movement, an NGO, international NGO, 3 of them. And one more, Pak Martin, unfortunately has not arrived yet, is the local NGOs. So, we have 1.5 maybe hour discussion. I'd like National, an NGO based in Washington. Of course, he has the chair or the chairman of the Nature Conservancy Indonesia. By the way, today is his birthday. So let's hear about him. So that's a surprise because I just read it and then, wow, this today. This is a surprise for us. So congratulations. And then the third one, of course, Pak Nyoman Suryadi Putra. I believe he has been more than 15, 20 years maybe in the Wetland International. So the three are very important because what we are really looking for is the activities. They have been doing this for the last at least more than 10 years. How that really the blue carbon think from their perspective. Of course, that can be really easy from scientist perspective, but they are the one that doing daily activities, conserving, also how that really the blue carbon it's work in Indonesia especially. So I'm going to start with Pak Ketut. Please, Pak Ketut, if you want to have something to say, or your activity basically in the CI.
Thank you, Pak Yatna Supriyatna, Pak Prof, Chairman, for this very delighted opportunity to be sitting here to share our experience dealing with the blue carbon. Thank you for CIFOR, IP, and other organizing committee to invite us to be able to participate in this a very important event, to contribute a little bit the learning that we have from the field addressing the blue carbon in Indonesia. I don't know where to start with actually, but I would like to really share what we have been doing with regard to the blue carbon ecosystem in Indonesia. So I would like to now, for example, the blue carbon context was in the Canada started a long time already, at least in our organization, in Conservation International. So about like 12 years ago, when we start our marine conservation, for example, addressing the MPA system in Indonesia, we start to bring the ideas within the ground in Indonesia, which is in the birds that escape in West Papua. So in the beginning, we learned actually the blue carbon is a kind of the magic word that we have discussing in this kind of forum actually. But in the ground, we don't use that term. It's because our communities is going to confuse with those kind of magic and iconic words. But we rather use, for example, how we can better conserve mangroves and seagrass in order to secure the ecological functions of that ecosystem for them. So when we went to the West Papua from Raja Ampat, Kaimana, Fak regions, and also Manokwari, we found that there is huge mangroves ecosystem and also seagrass. But the challenge is also huge on the ground. We learn from the blue carbon science, for example. We're going to use the science to really count about how much carbon is going to be able to sequestrate from this kind of very, very charismatic species of this ecosystem. But in the field, actually, what is really needed by our communities is how they are really challenging about how to conserve that ecosystem. And the other challenge is actually sometimes it's hard to communicate what does really the benefits of that ecosystem and seagrass to their own economy. It's because communities are looking for that actually within their own daily life. So then in Conservation International, then from that kind of thinking and also understanding the local context, and we try to really framing our program and strategy to how can we really address or design a strategy that will be able us to really conserve that ecosystem. So we use then the first one is going to be the governance. In terms of the governance, it's because we really want that the mangroves, the seagrass, is not going to become a kind of a common tragedy. Because we want the ecosystem to be well managed, to have a really a body on the active management body that will really manage that ecosystem. And then we start using that kind of the existing law that we have in Indonesia, for example, in Indonesian term, the Kawasan Konservasi Laut, which is marine protected areas system. And we were lucky enough when we first interact with the local government, which is Kaimana. For those who don't know Kaimana is the southern part of Regency of West Papua province, actually. So when you find a very iconic mangrove ecosystem. So when we first met with the Bupati, we were really struck by his really, the understandings. Pak Ketut, our mangrove is the core that really hosts and home for so many species of fish that produce our fish here in the districts. What we can do. So as an NGO, at the time, interact with the local communities, with the government, we were really like, wow, this is really a kind of a moment that we were waiting for. And because he invited us for diving and understanding better, it's not just about the mangrove areas, but also the areas, the reef system within the Kaimana and also and later on in Raja Ampat. We think that the best reef system that we have is because the mangrove is still healthy there. So then we work with the government and local communities to design, why don't we really protect the entire this mangrove system and include it being part of this marine protected area system. So then the local government lead this initiative and then now being put within as a core part within the mangrove, the marine protected areas in Kaimana. So I mean 85,000 hectare dead mangroves now being part of the MPA system. But this is only one of the elements. And then we're still struggling with the communities because communities seen what does it mean for us by protecting mangroves and putting the MPA system. What does it mean for us? So we then usually improve our communication and trying to understand and use the local language and the common language that looking at what are kind of the tangible benefits that community can get from protecting that mangrove system. So then we understand from the science, for example, the mangrove crabs, they use almost 80% of the mangrove ecosystem in seagrass as part of the life cycle. So we use then the tactic, like for example, the strategy, protecting the mangroves, generating income. So by protecting mangrove more, and the communities will get more mangrove crabs. So then we use this kind of ideas to communicate better, that by if communities protecting that mangrove, it's going to be more mangrove crabs that are going to be produced by the healthy mangrove system. So then we also use the fisheries element. This is the kind of ideas that we have been using now. By doing that kind of approach, the local governments and communities is getting more understanding that they protect the ecosystem, the blue carbon ecosystem, because they believe that protecting the system is going to producing more of fisheries. So like Prof. Daniel mentioned earlier, that talking blue carbon is not just about protecting the mangroves, but also trying to understand better the role of that blue carbon ecosystem and supporting the kind of economy. So then, in our conservation international program, we also try to understand about how much is the carbon sequestration capacity of that mangrove system. So we now learn about this kind of science element and trying to understand better. And we think that perhaps by protecting the entire mangrove in Kaimana may be equivalent to, for example, like maybe more than 20 million cars per year. So by protecting this, it means that we are avoiding the emission from the 20 million car every single year. So this is the kind of the ecosystem about the conservation effort by protecting the ecosystem. But we don't yet have a kind of good information at the moment about how much fish is going to be produced by a healthy mangrove system, right? So this is kind of the new, the next step that we really want to showcasing. Even though a lot of science already, a lot of library, a lot of information already available, which is very good, we can use that. But the communities are also looking the right example from within their own, neighboring ecosystem like this. So this is a kind of the science elements still need to be done on the ground in order to really improve our understanding about the role of the mangrove ecosystem on the economic aspects. I'll stop that part at the moment, Pak Yana, and also I would like to give time for other presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ketut. Let's get approach. The second speaker will be Pak Rizal.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of slides that I'd like to show, but I don't know if it's going to be... anyway, in the Nature Conservancy, we've been in Indonesia for 27 years. And in the past, most of our work is that we are leading the work, meaning that we're doing most of the things that we do it on our own, yeah. And we learn a lot from those processes. Strategy, working with and believe these 5 initiatives that we're doing currently. I think Pak Ketut has mentioned the work in West Park. We are also working there together with CI. But I'd like to touch on seaweed aquaculture, growing rapidly. Yeah. 10 to 20 years, the growth of seaweed will grow exponentially. Yeah. And the mangrove ecosystem is going to be impacted heavily by the growth of seaweed aquaculture, especially in Kalimantan and Papua. The 70% of the loss of mangrove in the next 20 to 25 years is going to happen in these 2 areas. Yeah. So when you address seaweed aquaculture, you cannot talk about the mangrove ecosystem with the communities, yeah? Because they need their livelihood, and we need to find ways on how we can involve the communities to help protect the ecosystem. So we are embarking on a different strategies, that is to help grow the seaweed aquaculture into a sustainable path. That's our way of doing things, and convince those communities that mangrove ecosystem is very important to help their business to be sustainable. So one of the challenges, the big challenges of seaweed aquaculture is that communities use the mangrove woods. They cut it down and they use as poling to tie the lines to hang their seaweeds. And sea grasses is also being impacted. In some places in eastern Indonesia, they pull out sea grasses so that it doesn't compete with the seaweed aquaculture. Yeah. So those are the impact that's going on in Indonesia. And if you can imagine, if there are millions of seaweed farmers across Indonesia, what kind of impact that will happen across Indonesia to mangrove ecosystem. So right now we are demonstrating sustainability in 10 villages in eastern Indonesia, mainly in the area of Kupang and Rote Islands, yeah, on how farmers can do seaweed aquaculture sustainably. And it does not conflict with tourism, it does not create pressure to mangrove ecosystem and seagrass and so forth. That's the first one. The second part is that we are planning to launch, actually, next week, Mangrove Ecosystem Restoration Alliance. It's a national platform that we created, and we want to plan to do mangrove protections and restoration across Indonesia. Of course, we cannot do this alone. We need to have a few demonstration sites that we will do in Jakarta area, in East Kalimantan, as well as in eastern part of Indonesia. Now, this alliance, as I said, our strategy is to embark, work with and through partners. To be able to scale up, we need those partnerships. Yeah? We are very strong in the science, and we are able to provide them with tools and experts, but somebody needs to help us to do the implementation on the ground. So our target is by 2022 is to identify and start protecting and restoring about 500,000 hectares of mangroves across Indonesia. And right now we are happy that there are already 10 partnerships established. We hope that we can generate more partnership along the ways to pursue this restoration initiative. The third initiative that we are already doing is mapping ocean wealth. It's a global initiative by TNC. We are also doing it in Indonesia in collaborations with IPB. It's to map coral reefs and coastal ecosystem throughout Indonesia. It's an ongoing process. I think this is a critical component of our work, that we need to understand where are the critical ecosystem, where are the most threats to this ecosystem. And this will determine our investment on where to do protections and where to do restorations and where to do livelihood for communities. So it's an ongoing process. It's going to be available for public as well, those data of mapping ocean wealth, not just for Indonesia, but globally that TNC is doing. I think another initiative that we are doing is on fisheries. When you talk about fisheries, the context is on sustainability and traceability. Indonesia's 75% is water, 25% is lands. And when you talk about fisheries, we don't have the data about how much stocks do we have in Indonesia's oceans. Yeah? And over the last 3 years, we have been embarking on a massive data collections to understand on the stock of the fish across Indonesia. Mainly, we are working in two fisheries management area, and we are working in two types of fisheries, in snapper and grouper, as well as in tuna, because these are the most, the major market demands within Indonesia as well as in export markets. And we're helping to create a system on how we can measure the stocks of the fish efficiently and effectively. And we've even embarked to develop a platform, a software. We call it Fish Face. Yeah? It's a facial recognition software for fish. Yeah? So that previously people, when they take data, they identify it manually. And it takes time. All of them is doing by pencil and papers. After that, they just throw it away. You know? But now you have a system where you can capture the picture of the fish and automatically identify the type of the fish, the size of the fish, as well as the location where the fish is being caught. And those systems help us to identify how healthy is the stock of the fish in a particular ecosystem. And this data is being transmitted to the ministry so that they are able to make decisions on the next steps, or whether or not to stop certain kind of fish to be fished. You know. Those are the things that we are doing right now. It's a massive work. A lot of data needs to be collected. Indonesia is it's a data poor country. It's in the process of building those data, and I think we all need to support those initiatives to help secure those data so that people, not just the governments, but businesses, communities, can make informed decisions on how to go forward, either to secure the economic activities, but at the same time, we need those data to do protection and restoration of the coastal ecosystem. So I'll leave it for that for now, Pa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yatna. So first of all, I would like to thank all participants for coming. I'm very happy to be here. Maybe I should inform you what is my background, actually. I was graduated from the Faculty of Fisheries in the early 80s. Maybe I would like to share with you what really happening with our mangrove ecosystems. So in the 70s, actually, when the shrimp booming happening in Asian countries, including Indonesia, a lot of the mangrove have been converted into shrimp ponds. So now we have about 3.2 million hectares of mangrove remaining, which is all recently mapped under the One Map policy, where Wetland International is a member of the One Map policy. So I would like to share with you regarding what is really the mangrove ecosystem conditions in Indonesia. Maybe in the past people always thinking that mangrove is something associated with the mineral soil. So recently we discovered actually mangrove in most of the coastal areas of Sumatra and also in Papua, they are actually in association with the peatland. So what I would like to raise here, in the past during the shrimp booming, a lot of mangrove have been converted and then converted into fish pond, into shrimp ponds, and then the shrimp were hit by the what we call it the white spot viral disease. And then what happened? The shrimp production collapsed. And then it was neglected, abandoned, and as the result, because mangrove already disappeared, and then now we are suffering with all this kind of eroded coastline, which used to be a mangrove forest. But what is the next challenge currently we are facing? It is the one where mangrove is in association with peatland. CIFOR finding regarding the carbon stored in the mangrove, let's say about 1,023 ton carbon per hectare, where 80% of the carbon actually located underneath of the mangrove forest. But what if beneath the mangrove is a peatland? So this is very interesting from the carbon point of view. Because if we mapped the mangrove distribution in Papua, actually underneath the mangrove is a peat, and also in the east coast. So currently the peatland itself actually facing a big problems with the conversions into the oil palm. So in one side, the oil palm will drain the water from the pit, at the same time they also remove the mangrove forest. So what I worried about very much, not only about the blue carbon, because if it is underneath is a pit, can I say it's a combination with the blue carbon with the brown carbon. So I leave it with you to decide what is the term. But anyway, this is a very big challenge. That's the situation. But anyway, I would like to share with you what we have been doing related with the mangrove restorations, which we already started in the mid-90s. We were started in Central Java, where the coastline already eroded. One of the village almost disappeared. So at the time I went to the field and I talked with the people, shall we protect your village by planting mangrove? And what they said, no, thank you, I don't have time. Give me job, I can help solve the problem. And I was so disappointed because we would like to help them to restore the mangrove. And I changed my mind. So what if I come to the village and I'm bringing money with you? Would you be interested to have money? It was in the gathering place in the village, and everyone raised their hand. Of course, I need money. And then I asked, so if you borrow money from the bank, what should you do? Well, I have to have a collateral, but we don't have it because we are poor people. Okay, what if I lend you money without collateral? Would you be interested with that? Everyone raising hand. Yeah, why not, yeah? So then, if you borrow the money from the bank, what should you do? I should pay the interest rate. What if I will not charge you with the interest rate? Will you be interested? Wow, this is surprising. So then we listed how many in the group, in the gathering place, interested to borrow money from us. At the time, I received a small grant from the donors. I have a few money in my pocket. So then I asked, how much money would you like to borrow? Okay, I would like to borrow 10 million rupiah. And the other, I make a list on the whiteboard, and then I would like to borrow 5 million. And then I ask, okay, since you don't have to pay the collateral, may I ask you to plant mangrove? If you borrow 10 million rupiah, so how much trees would you like to plant? So I put everything on the table, so then I come up with the conclusion. Well, those guys would like to borrow much money, but would like to plant a little mangrove. I will prefer to borrow the money for those people who would like to borrow less money but plant more. I cannot do that. So I just make an average. The total amount of money will be borrowed, and then the total of trees will be planted. So that was the start. Maybe I can say here, also with Marcel, my friend here. That's the start of the biorights theory. We call it the conditional grant that applied to the community. Yeah. So then the community agreed, okay, if they would like to borrow a certain amount of money, they have to plant so much trees. But in return, they have to maintain the trees because they don't pay the interest rate. So we make a contractual agreement for 5 years. Yeah. If more than 75% of the mangrove can be survived, so we turn the loan into a grant. And they were surprising. That's very interesting because no collateral, no interest rate. So at the end, we monitored more than 75% survive. Why? If they survive less than 75%, they have to pay the penalty. Yeah. So that's the history, and then we moved to Aceh after the tsunami. We tried to follow this kind of mechanisms instead of using the cash for works. Because I remember in Aceh at the time in 2005, 5 years, a lot of donors coming in with money, and then they apply the cash for works. They pay people to plant mangrove. You know what happened? I was in the field. There was no space left to plant mangrove. It's quite tricky. They removed the seed lake, which is already planted, and then they take another one, they plant it, and then they took the pictures. Give it to donor. Donor was quite happy. That's not the way how we work. That's not really educating the people. So we apply the same concept that we established in Central Java, what we call it the conditional loan, yeah, or conditional grant, something like that. So, and then we moved to Aceh. It was very interesting, yeah, because until today, if we check the satellite images, you can see some part of the area which were degraded during the tsunami, and then now it looks very green. And then we moved to Flores, and then we moved to Gorontalo, and also in Banten, elsewhere in Indonesia. It was very interesting. So back to the issues of blue carbon. So I would like to propose something quite different. What it is how to actually restore the degraded ponds. Because roughly I can come up with figures more than 3 million hectares of the mangrove habitats already converted into fish, but actually they stored a lot of carbon. We did some kind of pilot project not far from here. It is in Banten Bay. The project located behind the conservation areas where it was converted into fish pond. And then in front of the wildlife reserve, the Cagar Alam Pulau Dua, the area severely degraded because of the very strong current. So what we did, so we trapped the sediment in front of the reserve using a very simple technology. We were using floating old fish net. So we stretched the nets in front of the eroded area, yeah, and then behind is the natural, the reserve, the mangrove reserve. It's only 30 hectares area, but very rich with the migratory waterbirds. So you know what happened? During the high tides, the seawater bringing a lot of sediments toward inland, and then during the low tide, the water from inland will went into the sea and bringing a lot of debris, the leaves, the sediment, whatever, and then the leaves actually they are clogging the fish net, yeah, and then all the sediment actually being trapped. And at the same time, thousands of the mangrove seedlings coming from the reserve area, it was stranded in front of the nets. So now we are having extended area of the reserve. And then we sent one of the master degree students from the IPB. She did some research. It was very interesting. In 3 years' time, in 1 hectare of the new habitat of mangrove in the trap sediment, we found at least 50 tons of carbon per year. Yeah, per hectare, 50 tons carbon per hectare, yeah, just within 3 months. So what does it mean? Actually, the sediments transported from the river nearby the area and also from the sea. It was trapped and it settled huge amount of carbon. So now the trees itself, it only stopped less than 40 tons per hectare. Sorry, I repeat it again. So 1 hectare, it can trap 130 tons of carbon in 3 months, while the above ground, it is only 40 tons. So 3 times more. So what does it mean? If we can map actually the eroded part of Indonesia along the coastline, and then we apply quite similar technology by trapping the sediment, actually trapping the carbon. So that's one concept. The second concept, because a lot of the fish pond being abandoned. So the fish pond actually, they stored so much amount of carbon. Where the carbon coming from? They're coming during the aquaculture practices, either from the food, the feed, yeah, for the fishes, and also from the pellets, the artificial food, and also from the fishes, and also carbon coming in from the water, whatever. So actually, the fish pond, which is currently being abandoned, in most of the coastal areas of Indonesia, they are storing huge amount of carbon. But how to make sure this carbon in the fish pond can be maintained, not to be washed away? So I proposed during this presentation, this discussion, that I would like to propose the government actually to issuing a new policy on how to provide incentive to those abandoned fish pond, yeah, make use of this abandoned fish pond as a carbon trapping. But how to do that? Maybe through the incentive. Government can provide it a discount for the PBB, pajak bumi dan bangunan, is a tax, land tax. Because currently, even though the fish pond is abandoned, but the owner still have to pay tax. But if we can ask the owner of the pond, yeah, to plant mangrove, what we call it a CIFOR fishery, to plant mangrove along the pond dikes and also in the middle of the abandoned fish pond, that it will store so much amount of carbon. It is not only from the above ground, because the above ground carbon from the mangrove, it is not very much. Let's say maximum maybe only 200 tons. That's for the mature or adult mangrove. But the below ground is much higher, which is already proven by the CIFOR scientific result. So that's all for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Nyoman. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have just introduction on what is the blue carbon and what their activities. Pak Ketut mentioned about there are 5 things that has been done on this blue carbon: science, fisheries, communities, marine protected areas, and there has been many activities by Conservation International. Similarly, Pak Rizal, they're also talking about a lot of new initiatives. I think this NGOs, civil society, has already developed this model, such as Pak Rizal mentioned about this sustainability, traceabilities, all to the fisheries, tuna, and also the protection. That's very important. And both of them, 3 of them, are working on the mangrove protection. Pak Nyoman has been really elaborate this effort on how do we develop this protection using the trap. So that was really interesting to see that. So ladies and gentlemen, before we are going to give the time for you guys to request, but I have a kind of question to 3 of these. First of all, that how do we channel this, your experience, 3 of them, to become a policy, Pak Nyoman mentioned about that. How did really the finding of your activities into the policy? Because sometimes, yes, your activity is the pilot in several spots, but how do we make sure that the policy of government also in line with what we okay. So let's start with Pak Nyoman and then we go back to here to Pak Ketut.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yatna. It is a very interesting question. How to actually make sure the policy support our conservation of the blue carbon. So actually I should explain regarding the green belt policy. Actually the Indonesian government already established what we call it fungsi kawasan lindung. Yeah? It is under the presidential decree. It was issued in 1990. So in that decree it was stated the width of the green belt, it is 130 multiplied by the differences of the tide. If you had the tide differences, let's say 2 meters, so 2 meters times 130, 260 meters must be protected as a green belt. Yeah? But 2 years ago, our President Jokowi has revised that kind of policy. So now the green belt wide, it is actually minimum 100 meters from the highest tide toward inland. Minimum. Yeah? So what does it mean? With this policy, if you go to Papua, either to West Papua or to Papua, where the mangrove is so thick, yeah? So if you are using the first policy, that 130 multiplied by the different side of tide, there are a lot of the mangrove, becoming susceptible for cutting, yeah? Because each areas in Indonesia, the mangrove wild is very different one to the others. That's one issue. Currently, we are working now in Demak and also in Banten. So the Banten, it is very interesting, but because the local government would like to establish what we call it a waterfront city. So we are negotiating, instead of 100 meters having a green belt, we try to convince the parliament and also the government how to extend the green belt. Yeah, this is interesting. But anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to propose actually for those degraded or abandoned fish pond, which stores huge amount of carbon, yeah? Because the current practices, actually, you know what happened in the fish pond area? They will remove the sediment that locally known as keduk teplok. What does it mean, keduk teplok? Is to remove the sediment, yeah? So this sediment is a very rich carbon. And then they remove the sediment and then they piled up along the dike. So what does it mean? So if the sediment is removed and put along the dike, so it will be oxidized. So the carbon dioxide will be emitted to the atmosphere. But if the sediment stay in the pond bed, so that means the organic matter will not be disturbed. And if at the same time we planted the mangrove, it means we are not only gaining the carbon from the above ground, but it is also from the preserved sediment. So that needs, as I mentioned earlier, so how to do that? How to convince the local government? Okay, that people who own that pond, a kind of incentive might be reduction of the tax, land tax. So that's one issue. The second issue, it is related also with the kind of the policy related also with the conservation areas. Or maybe, as I mentioned earlier, we now established an expansion of the Pulau Dua Wildlife Reserve because we trapped sediment and we were able now to extend the area. But when I discussed with the local government, can we extend the area of the wildlife reserve of Pulau Dua? And the local government said, no, cannot. Because the wildlife reserve area, it is under the jurisdictions of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. But outside that boundary, it is under the jurisdictions of the local government. Yeah. So then I asked, well, but if, yeah, both sides might be correct, but my perception, if we can extend it to wildlife reserve, that means actually we will have more secure in terms of the conservation status of the area. Because if the local government would like to take it over, so we don't know what will be the future fate of the area. So that is more or less, lots more, but I should share also with the others.
Thank you, Pak. Oh.
These were economists. Why is it the local government don't see that the opportunities? For example, they always think about, they don't see that the carbon is really very big things. It's economically compared to others. Why is it, for example, Nyoman mentioned that, well, the local government see that, don't see it. You are economists, how do you see that?
I don't think it's just the local governments. You know, when you talk across Indonesia from village level to national ministries, I think there are still lacking of knowledge and capacities to understand that part. So I think to be able to change the paradigm, the situation, you know, we need transformational change. I think I can show, maybe Pak Ketut can add as well that, for example, on marine protected areas, you know, when we embarked on this initiative 10 years ago, there are nothing in Indonesia, you know. So the coalitions of NGOs, yeah, even there are a few of them here, we start to work together, you know. When you build that coalitions, you are much stronger and you are much able to do advocacy and demonstrate to science, yeah. From that, you see a lot of policies has been issued for marine protected areas. And there are commitments from the governments, previous governments, 20 million hectares of MPA. This time, we're going to go above that to 30 million hectares of marine protected areas, you know. So we need to have that coalitions of partners. So in the land side as well, we are doing the same thing, building coalitions. So when you have a lot of voice, not just from the NGO sectors, but from the communities, indigenous people, businesses, when you embark on a shared agenda, then you're starting to make tractions to change. Yeah. So we have been here for 27 years, and I think most of the people would agree, you know, when you talk to people on the grounds, either it is communities, businesses, governments, when you talk about conservation, it's not their interest, you know. It's not their forte. We need to talk to them on economic language, business language, you know. Why is this important, not just now, but for the future? How can this create jobs? How can this create more tax revenues for the governments, you know? This is the language that we need to change. You know, us NGOs need to change this language. We're using too many, you know, conservation terms that nobody else understands, frankly speaking. Because I'm from the business sectors, I'm not a conservationist. I came from the bank. Most of my time I work in the private sectors. I came in, I had trouble to understand what are the terms, what are the goals that NGOs are trying to achieve. Yeah. So we need to be able to quantify, yeah, quantifications of the goals in terms of not just hectares, you know, but what those carbon sequestration means to the economy. How much revenues does the government will take in? How does that help the government to grow? So those kind of things that we need to talk to the government, but at the same time, also deliver, demonstrate that you are making change on the ground. Because without those change, you are not able to prove that your methodologies is working. Yeah. So both aspects needs to be done at the same time. Those are the experience that we've had, and over the last, you know, 5 years, we're changing the language on how we speak, you know, not just to communities, but businesses and governments as well. Thank you.
But I can see the connection. We all see the connection. But a country like us, like Indonesia, we really committed to fulfill the global commitment. Like, for example, protecting the or reducing the carbon emissions. But I would like to share. I just want to touch base a little bit what Pak Nyoman and Pak Rizal mentioned actually. It's about the challenge, Pak Yatna, about how can we really make sure that we have a very good science-based solution in conserving the blue carbon ecosystem. So I just want to share, maybe if you all know about the Raja Ampat, let me share a little bit the story why we came up at the Raja Ampat today. So if you really look at Raja Ampat from the 14 years ago when we start in Raja Ampat, it's because this is a camp that 75% of the entire reef species are found there, right? But if you really look at how the structure of the natural capital there, it's almost 90% of the forests, including mangroves, the entire Raja Ampat are fully protected. That's why we have a very clear water system that allows the coral reefs including flourish in Raja Ampat. So that's why in 2004, when we designed the seascape program, we enter the approach like a seascape, which is we are looking forward where are exactly the blue carbon ecosystem that we need to protect and conserve to secure those kind of ecological services for the entire Raja Ampat. Thus we came up at more than 1.5 million hectare, the entire part of Raja Ampat to become conservancy allowed, MPA system. So if I cannot imagine if all the mangrove, all the forests within Raja Ampat were not protected, I don't think we can have those kind of the quality of coral reef system today. So this is one of the elements. When I trying to link my thinking with what Pak Nyoman saying that the challenge, I think our challenge in Indonesia is about our inability to really internalize the externalities. We fail to really put the real values about the mangrove ecosystem and seagrass or blue carbon ecosystem, say like that. It's because the current policy doesn't really yet fully recognize that value. That's why we have on the ground is always fighting and find the challenges to convince our policymaker. But I really hope within the context, within the living example that we have, how we design with the government, MMAF, local government to design Raja Ampat today, it's going to be good lesson learned. How really transform this kind of approach from, for example, the healthy forests and the healthy oceans to become a kind of a new approach, reef conservation approach, to be put as a policy national in order to fully protect the blue carbon ecosystem in Indonesia, to be a kind of the engine, the economic source for building the coastal economy. So this is, Prof. Daniel mentioned this morning, it's a blue economy thing. So there's one the element, another jargon, but I fully believe that if Indonesia is going to be protecting the entire those ecosystem, I think it's going to be a very, very strong values and capital or assets to build more blue economic in Indonesia. So I'd like to address a little bit about the initiative on restoring the abandoned shrimp ponds. Yeah, I love to address this because this is also my own experience long time ago, about 25 years ago, looking at how the mangroves being converted in the countries. So, but it's good to see that now it's just many initiatives on the ground trying to restore that. But still the challenge is about the commitment, about do we really want to protect it? Because, for example, if you look at in our countries now, every region would like to build a freshwater city, right? So it's very often the blue carbon ecosystems they have nobody to protect them, right? Because it seems to me that they need help from all of us. So the Blue Carbon Summit like this is going to be one of the avenue, a moment that potentially would lead to mobilize those kind of support that we really hope that the policymaker will really integrate that values into their decision in order to secure that the natural capital for Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Yana.
Thank you, Pak Ketut. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu sekalian, I think we still have 20 more minutes to discuss. So anybody want to share or you want to quick question or something? Please raise your hand. The right side here, one. Ibu Ganjar, Prof. Ganjar. The left side. Okay, all right, in the middle. So let's we have three person who gonna go. Ya, silakan.
I would like to address my question to all three speakers. I'm Indrati from IEPE. You all talk about higher conservation of higher organisms. Nobody talks about the tiny organisms, invisible, the microorganisms we call, that are also working always very close together with all the mangrove plants. And documents are that they play a very important role. They can produce bioactive compounds, and that is all because they play a role also in the biochemical cycle of life. And no higher organism can live alone without microorganisms. So do you have any intent in the future maybe to do, let me say, a cooperation with microbiologists to explore more about the living creatures that also play a role in the blue carbon cycle?
Thank you, Bu. Second.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is RK. I would like, this is my voice, I would like to challenge the definition about blue carbon. To be honest, blue carbon is very important, and we know everything happened in the terrestrial regarding the green carbon or even the black carbon we call due to the smoke, or even the how to say the brown carbon. It eventually will go to the ocean and will impact the blue carbon. So blue carbon is so much important, and we know the ocean is not static. Ocean is very dynamic, and I don't have any problem when the definition of blue carbon it's only limit to everything related in the coastal, like mangrove, seagrass bed, or whatever. But I feel open ocean needs to have a better intention, because what happened in the ocean, in the open ocean, somehow give a very strong background to the dynamics of the coastal. And I would like to invite many of you to see my presentation in the afternoon regarding the first peer review paper on the blue carbon that is how to say published in DGR Ocean. And to be honest, I don't have a good voice to extend the definition of blue carbon, despite the fact I how to say have a SATREPS GST, JICA GST. It is big project related to blue carbon. Even I'm the one who make that proposal, cannot have a voice to extend the definition of blue carbon. And I think this blue carbon summit somehow because we are quite strong in the blue carbon community, if possible to consider to include open ocean. It's not making to be complicated, but include it in the definition of blue carbon. Thank you so much.
Thank you for additional. Of course, there are a lot of things to do with this open ocean. But let's the third person who's going to question or
Hi,
comment.
Luisa Teixeira from Planet. I heard
From where?
mention from Planet.
Planet.
I heard mentions from about traceability, data, mapping, inventory of all these mangroves, seagrasses, fishing ponds, abandoned ones. And I was wondering how much data and data collection, storage, and consistency is still a problem, and how do you see this going forward?
Thank you. So let's start with the three. Pa Rizal, asking about this, the third one, the traceabilities. Pak Ketut, if you can answer this microorganisms. And also Pak Nyoman, because you have been the one that long time in this blue carbon. If you can answer that, the challenge, what the definition of this blue carbons. So let's start with Pak Ketut.
Oh, okay. Wow. This is, Ibu, ini pertanyaan, oh sorry, I speak Bahasa. This is a very great question. I like that. It's because, yes, it's right, Ibu, we haven't been really yet much address the microorganism role within our current program, actually. However, we are very interested on assessing more, studying more this kind of role, microorganism role in the blue carbon ecosystem conservation and management. It's because in one of the experience that we have on the ground, actually, we would like to, this is still a lot of study needed, actually. We found that there are a lot of potential, for example, like micro, like a bacteria things that really live within the ecosystem, that potential to be used as a, for example, the part of the medical things. So I don't have yet the best data that I can share with all of the audience, actually, but there is a kind of further research and assessment should still be to be done, and how this can occur, you know, the potential can be materialized for Indonesia. So it's I can inform you later if this kind of one of the new findings has been found, how this can be potentially used for the medical sector. We need to discuss more with you. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. The data collections, when you started, at least the first year, you try to get the consistency. Yeah? And you also try to, the second part is also to convince the partners, the communities, all the key stakeholders, and you know, your intention to collect those data, you know. But once you have all those already in place, then you start taking those data and try to make it consistent. The issue that we had in the beginning is about the people. You need to educate the people, your partners, your staffs, to be consistent in taking those data, you know. But once you do that, and we found that people move, you know, then we start training people again and again, you know. So it's an ongoing challenge, and that's why we embarked to develop a system. You know, we developed that for the sustainability and traceability system. We developed this software, we call it fish face, you know, to a facial recognition for fish. And you don't need to train the people so so much and so time-consuming to train them. They're able to just use the system, take the pictures, and the system will do the work for you. So you need to identify on how you can systemize from manual to automations in your data collections. I think the second challenge going forward is about how is those data is going to be used to inform decision making. The problem that we had is that when you provide data, it just stays there. So we need to create the dashboards as well, so that people can see and visualize and make those decisions quickly. Everybody can have the same perspective when they see graphics, instead of data. So those kind of dashboards, you have the shared goals and you develop the dashboard and people can start visualize that and create informed decisions. But I think the third challenge going forward is that there's not much funding available, for data collections, to be frank with all of you. That's the difficult part in our job. Many people want to have funding that can be demonstrated and visualized to the public really quickly. But to find, to create those kind of system, like what we did, in some of our projects, it took us 2 to 3 years, Now those are very powerful tools that we have developed, and they help a lot of our stakeholders to make those decisions. So I would request to, whoever the funders are here, help us, on funding for data collections. It is important. Indonesia is data poor, and we need to develop that system for making those decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very challenging questions. First, regarding the mangrove map, I would like to share with you. I don't know if in this room there is government staff from the BIG. Ada nggak staff dari BIG? Okay, BIG is a Geospatial Information Agency. They are in charge with this kind of one map policy. And Wetland International is one of the member within this kind of one map policy. Yeah, but we are focusing mainly on the issues of mangrove. So if you ask us about regarding how the data can be actually used or convince the result, yeah? Actually, I've tried once to compare the data collected by Max Spalding. I don't know if you're aware. They produce a global atlas of mangrove all over the world. And I compared with the data prepared by BIG. It was the result. It is not very much different. Let's say 3.2 million hectares. But the question is, can we differentiate it between the true mangrove and then the associated mangrove? Because if the mapping it is based on the land cover, of course, it looks quite similar one to the others. Because the associated mangrove, it is not really the ones located in the, grow in the mud ecosystem. But anyway, data is available currently under the one map policy. For the mangrove data, it is under the jurisdictions of the Ministry of Forestry and the Environment. Yeah. So currently, they already finalized the map of mangrove for Sumatra and part of Kalimantan, Java, and NTB. Yeah. So currently, they are in the progress. But anyway, data might be changing from time to time because very dynamic because of the conservation or rehabilitations of the mangrove anywhere in Indonesia. Okay, the second question, it is very interesting regarding can we actually include the open ocean as part of the blue carbon? I will be the one who will say yes, definitely. You know why? Because NASA already identified 50 gigatons of carbon being stored in the ocean. While the Indonesia, we are as an archipelago island, actually we are contributing 50% of the blue carbon from the ocean actually stored in Indonesia ocean. Before I worked with International, I used to work with the US oil service company. My background actually a Caribbean geologist, maybe sounds very strange. So I studied regarding the fossil, which is already preserved in the very deep, far away from the surface. Actually, our fossil fuel actually coming from the algae, either from the freshwater algae or either from the ocean algae, the marine algae. So what does it mean? Actually, algae will have a very significant role in sequestering the carbon. It will help actually, let's say, I attended the COP13 in Bali. I mean, the British scientists, they try already fertilizing the ocean in order to create a kind of alga blooming. Yeah. So, but how to preserve this alga, the algae, because they are very huge amount when it is blooming. Yeah. So can we preserve actually the algae deep down at the seabed? Because if this alga contacted in contact with the oxygen, it will be decomposed, and the CO2 will be coming back into the atmosphere. By the way, it's very interesting. So I fully agree. Let's make sure that the open ocean can be the major part of the blue carbon. Yeah, why? Because the ocean actually storing low amounts of carbon. But apart from that, I would also like to promote the algae, because algae, it is growing not only in deep ocean, but also in the shallow water, also in the lagoonal ecosystem. You know what happened in Aceh after the tsunami? There are a lot of new, natural made lagoon. Yeah, it was very interesting, because after the tsunami, during the tsunami, there are a lot of bad sediment. It was transported from the deep sea, and then it blocked many of the estuarine in Aceh. And then now they established a new lagoon. So we've forgotten actually the lagoon stored huge amount of carbon in terms of the microalgae or the macroalgae. Okay. The last one regarding the microorganism, this is very interesting as well. Why? Because it is not only the microorganism, I think it is also the macro, like the benthic fauna. Yeah? If you go to the mangrove forest or the mud flood nearby the mangrove forest, actually very rich in this kind of macrobenthic organisms. And if you look at the waterbird migratory, the migratory waterbird species, actually this is the history of why the Ramsar Convention was established in the 71. At the time, the waterbird scientists sitting together, and then they were surprised why our waterbird population is decreasing. And then they found out because a lot of wetlands, in the coastal wetlands, have been converted. You know why? Because the birds, when they flew from Europe to Indonesia or somewhere in the tropics, they have to, let's say, fill their fuel. They will stay in the coastal areas, they will eat the microbenthos, whatever, but because of the area already converted, and then the food is no longer there. And then many of the water birds are then dying because lack of food. So, of course, this is very important that we have to identify the roles of mangrove. It is not only for the carbon, but it is also part of the food cycle, for the other living organisms. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. We still have 5 more minutes, so I know that it's for burning issue. If you have 1 or 2 questions, one there in the backs. No one? That's okay. Okay, this is so there are 2 people. Go ahead.
Hi. My name is Baston. I'm with mongobay.com. So I have a question regarding the economics of blue carbon, or the finance part of blue carbon. Say, for example, if I were a businessman who had $1 million or $500,000, where should I start looking into investing if I want to invest in blue carbon, for example? And what would be the financial benefit of my investment in blue carbon? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Muryono from ITS Surabaya. I'm not sure, I just spinning in my mind. I want to asking for all of you in front about the Blue Carbon Summit. It is very difficult for me to ignore the other than blue. I mean, how it is you know, it's ridiculous if you want to change the issue, because the terrestrial issue now is still remaining unsolved problem like palm oil and other. Now we're switching to the Blue Carbon Summit. I'm not sure it is question or like just sharing of problem. But one thing we must concern is we cannot split the blue or another say that gray or green. The carbon is cycles. So if you want to put down the important thing, it is now to collaborate, not just only blue, I think, it's just carbon summit for me, because we don't have to claim that we are the heroes of carbon, because now we research in mangrove. But I think the problem is the island, which is most people in Indonesia is the more important than the most carbon stock in Indonesia. So the population issue and the mangrove issue, sometimes we cannot ignore. So this maybe it's like just concern or comment why we have to adjust just only blue carbon, because carbon cannot split with other carbon because it cycles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, anyone to answer this? Parizal?
Let me just respond on the first questions. On the economics part, I would like to address not the economics on the carbon side, but the economics of protecting the ecosystems, you know. I think that's first and foremost, that is really critical, so that people really understand what's the value of protecting coastal ecosystems, you know. Our science shows that you know, protecting ecosystem, let's just say, you know, in Jakarta, you know, when you go to the airport, you pass the toll, Pantai Kapok, yeah, you see, you know, there's a lot of degraded mangroves there, you know. Used to be full of mangrove, now it's already less than 300 hectares. Out of that 300, 50% of it is degraded, you know. And you see the impact to the coastal area even deeper than that, you know. Intrusions, abrasions, storms, you know. It damages the properties, it damages vital infrastructures, yeah. If it continues to do that, you know, we have vital infrastructures, the airports, the toll roads, a lot of office buildings, you know. If those are impacted, what is the cost of rebuilding that or ensuring that, you know? We don't have currently insurance, you know, to protect those gray infrastructures in Indonesia from those kind of issues. Yeah? We do have in the US, but not here. So by investing in natural climate solutions, such as mangroves, seagrass, you know, coral reefs, help them to protect, help them to restore, you're actually protecting a lot of things at the coastal areas. Yeah. So there are real economic benefits in doing that, not just the properties, but people's lives, people's livelihood as well. There has been a lot of research done, and there are economic values. It can be quantified on the return on investment in investing in natural climate solutions. I don't want to say anything about the carbon side, because our business is about protecting the biodiversities and the ecosystems on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak. It's a very interesting question regarding if I'm a businessman, where should I invest my money? Regarding with the blue carbon, very interesting question. Why? Because if you look at back, the blue carbon, please do not concentrate only on the issues of carbon. Yeah? Because we talk about mangrove, we talk about seagrass, whatever. Let's look at the function, the benefit provided by this kind of ecosystems and also the commodity itself. But if you ask me, if I'm an investor, actually, if I have money, I would like to establish industrial biofuel industry. Instead of using the palm oil as a biofuel, why don't we use the algae? Yeah, because in the U.S. currently, huge research have been conducted on how to convert the algae, which is coming from the blue carbon from the open ocean, and convert it into biofuel. Yeah, this is very interesting. Why? Because the gasoline that we are using now actually derived from the fossilized algae. Yeah, because when I was in the oil industry, that was one of my tasks to identify what is the fossil contain. If it contains a certain algae, so the geologists will continue drilling the sediment. Yeah? So not only for the biofuel, but the blue-green algae, the algae can also be used as a medicine. If you go to the supermarket, you can see already the sun chlorella. In most of the medicinal drugstore, it's marketable. Yeah? So a lot of things that actually can be benefited for the business. And yesterday I heard what happened with our mangrove being sustainably managed, chopped down, and then exported to Korea. So what they are doing with the mangrove, they produce chip. And then the chip processed into pulp. And then the pulp exported to Japan. What they are doing with the mangrove pulp, they're producing money, the banknotes, the yen. So the yen banknotes is actually derived from the mangrove trees. What I heard, because of the quality, is very good. Yeah? And also the charcoal, whatever. But of course, I'm not recommending you to chop all the trees of mangrove. Yeah? But how to manage sustainably, so at the same time, you protect the mangrove, but at the same time, you can harvest it also, that produce money. I hope one day you will open up this kind of companies producing a banknote of Indonesia using the mangrove as a basic materials. Anyway, the second question, it was related, it is not about palm oil or blue carbon, whatever, maybe a bit loss of I understand. Because I just aware quite recently, I was surprised because a lot of our mangrove forest in the west coast of Sumatra, North Sumatra, and also in Papua, be aware, now it's being invaded or converted into the oil palm. It is very silly business. You know why? During the high tides, the seawater coming in, and I have the pictures with me. A lot of the trees, because underneath the mangrove is a peatland, and then they cut the mangrove, and then they planted oil palm. And then they drained the water out, and then the pit subsided, and the trees collapse, fall down, and then the seawater coming in. And many of the oil palm, even though they're already 15 years old, if you go to the west coast of North Sumatra, I went there with CIFOR, with CI, Catholic staff. It was very interesting. No fruits produced. Why? Because the oil palm is already inundated with the seawater quite regularly. So, I mean, this is a very big challenge because blue carbon, it is not only talking about the issues of mangrove, but also what is underneath. Yeah? So we have to also look at from the other benefits by the existence of the mangrove and also the peat along the lowland coastal areas. Thank you, Pak.
May I have 1 second, Pak Yata? I'd like to a little bit touch base there is a very good question in terms of the investment in blue carbon ecosystem. From my point of view, I think is when we are putting all those kind of economic term into blue carbon in ecosystem, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the challenge is about the true cost. How will we put true cost within those? It's not just about the economic benefit directly coming from what we develop within the blue carbon ecosystem, but also about the risk for not having the blue carbon ecosystem within those areas, the landscape. Pak Rizal just mentioned the same thing about the example. What happened? What are the costs of not having mangroves within the Jakarta Bay? What is the daily, for example, cost for this? It's not just about getting the fisheries, but also the environmental costs, for example. You can have flooding increase every year. You can have, for example, the coastal abrasion in the ocean. How much does it really cost for not having that ecosystem really well developed within a free coastal ecosystem? So this is put in mind from my perspective. But if we are talking about the investment on or how can we really translate those or blue carbon into the monetary term? From my perspective, is if we look at our country, is we are an archipelagic countries. As an archipelagic countries, we have the dominance is that the marine ecosystem. One of the herd of coral triangle that have all those kind of blue carbon ecosystem. The economic term they have to develop, I think from my perspective, if you are conserving this blue carbon ecosystem, it should be through the ecotourism. So this is a kind of changing the paradigm of investment from my perspective, because it's only two ways I can see at the moment how we can really take the benefits direct from this blue carbon ecosystem. One is about the direct from the fisheries benefits, and the second from the economic value coming from the tourism investments. So, and of course there is a kind of this carbon trade, but I don't want to talk about this because it's a long way to go, right, on that setting. But the second one I would like to address a little bit what you call, are you going to use the blue carbon or green carbon or everything like this, but the problem is still there. But I think I would like to put this, would be great if Prof. Daniel will answer this question later on, right? Because he's the guru on that, right? But if I might say that the reason they put the blue carbon is because the ability of the ocean of Costa Rica to sequester the carbon system, right? So, but that using the blue carbon setting is a kind of a little bit a marketing gimmick also to build enthusiasm, aspiration, right? To be closer with the responsibility to conserve that marine coastal ecosystem. Thank you.
Let's give applause to everybody here. So, the three gentlemen basically has been many years working in this business, in these areas of the blue carbon or green, whatever carbons, right? So they are really the one that working for conserving the nature, especially, of course, in the ocean, in the coastal, also in, of course, in the forests. But this is really especially rich experience from Pak Nyoman, Pak Rizal, and Pak Ketut, that the three of them that has been really working on the mangrove, especially the mangrove areas, under the coastal areas. There are so many things that has been discussed, but I can say that I cannot conclude it, but the highlight of this is very important. One is that, of course, there are so many challenges, because sometimes people think that this is the gray areas. Whether that is really like forest has to belong to who, or ocean belong to who. This is the one that they call the twilight, or whatever. This is very important. But Pak Ketut said, in terms of policy, we really need to have to internalize the externalities. Means that how do we mainstream this into the policies? How that really the whole thing that has been discussed, the economic benefits, the science possible the microbe can be making the $1 billion, or the tourism. Tourism, by the way, is now #1 in GDP. And I believe the 2020, they're going to be the first, the GDPs coming from the tourism. We don't want to just only Bali to be tourists. We have the archipelagic countries. That's why I think the discussion is also possible. The tourism is also one of the very strong message. The protecting the nature, because if you're protecting the coastal, you're also protecting the forest. You're protecting the cities. You're also protecting the fishermen. So that's really a lot of externality that has been discussed. But the last one is also that with the sustainability, also using traceabilities, using many other tools, I think that's really good that for the futures, that's going to be fantastic for important collaboration between the economists, the business, also the scientists. Because Bu Ganjar mentioned that there are possible so many things for bioprospecting in these areas of mangrove and many other things. So ladies and gentlemen, that's my moderating these three important gentlemen in Indonesia who has been working in this blue carbon for many years. Let's applaud for this. Thank you very much, Bu Bapak, dan thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jatna Supriyatna, and all the speakers. Thank you so much. Please be seated. Would you like stay together to take a picture? The speakers and moderator, would you like to join together to take a picture? Please join, Pak. Okay, let's give applause to the first discussion panel. Thank you so much. Participants, after we discuss about the challenge and also opportunity in blue carbon management in Indonesia, we will go further to the next agenda will be parallel discussion forum that will start at 1 p.m. sharp at the second and fourth floor. And as you may see in your agenda book, there will be 3 parallel discussion. You may see in this agenda here. There will be fishing industry and sustainable blue economy in the 4th floor. And then second is marine tourism and shipping industry at the 4th floor. And the third is institution and government system for blue carbon. It's here in the auditorium at the 2nd floor. And let me mention to you that lunch will be served at the 17th floor. Yeah, lunch will be served at the 70th floor. Meanwhile, musola is in 6th floor. Yeah, you will have a little bit exercise, so you will not ngantuk, yeah? You will not sleepy. That's why we remind you to please make your way 10 minutes before the next session start, since maybe lift might be in high demand and we have to wait for a while. And last, we would like to deliver our appreciation to our sponsor. Thank you to Yayasan Belantara, Indonesia Climate Change Trust Fund, and also Yayasan Kehati. Thank you so much for your support. And also from the government, thank you so much for your support. And okay, I will see you on parallel discussion at 1 p.m. sharp. And have a nice lunch, yeah? 17th floor for lunch, musola 6th floor, and panel discussion will be 4th and 2nd floor. Thank you so much. See you.